We'll try and keep this short as possible. I think we got it down to 2 hours. So, Kyle, you locked the doors, right? Okay, so if you've been with us throughout the morning, you would have heard some best practices on your right-of-way acquisitions, getting your parcels cleared for construction, testifying in an eminent domain case, which was very interesting, actually, and then also managing your utility portfolio. Now what we'd like to do is complete the session with a case project using some of these tools. That project would be the 281 Phase 2 reconstruction. We'll go through the process, the project. I think y'all are allowed just one question. And then, right? No? Okay. And then we'll go through some contact information as well. So it begins with a team process. And actually, when I wrote that, I think that's a misnomer. Every project will begin with a problem. You have a problem with congestion or whatever it is, and then it becomes a project, then you get into design. At that stage, the project goes through, planning, schematic, project specifications and estimate, PS&E, all the way to letting. Throughout that process, there's a great deal of communication involved.
Communication is important throughout the entire process, but most importantly in the beginning. Things that we need to discuss include proposed letting date, who's going to be responsible for contracting for right-of-way surveys, if it's going to be through the PS&E contract, if it's going to be our district survey, or even right-of-way, if right-of-way is going to handle that. What utilities are going to be impacted and how long the relocation is going to take for those utilities. This information is important because we need to prioritize our resources. We need to coordinate with the district to find out what their schedule is, what their expectations are, and how we can be of service to the district.
In regards to the utility relocation, we have ongoing communication with our right-of-way team. We're always communicating. We assist them with any questions that they get from parcel acquisitions in regards to utilities. We also communicate the status of the parcel acquisition because we know utilities cannot relocate until the right-of-way has been acquired and environmental has been cleared. In regards to design, we have ongoing communication to assist in identifying who the stakeholders are, who are the utilities out within the project limits. And we also brainstorm ways to be able to avoid, minimize the utility conflicts and to identify the conflicts early on. As it was previously mentioned, in San Antonio, one of the things we're doing is our 30% design, 30% PS&E design phase or submittal is actually more of a 60% design submittal. We're including underground improvements, we're including drainage, retaining walls, we're including a lot of things earlier, so we are able to identify conflicts early on.
The project we'd like to go over today is US 281 Phase 2 reconstruction project. It's the second segment that's slated for construction along this corridor. Phase 1 is currently in construction to the south. So if you're looking at the screen, Phase 1 is to the left or to the south, and its limits are from 1604 to Marshall Road. If you're not familiar with this portion of 281, it's an existing 4-lane divided highway. With no frontage roads. There's signalized intersections and there's some super streets throughout the limits there. The limits for Phase 2 is going to be just about a mile north of Stone Oak Parkway to the Bear-Comal County line. As with Phase 1, there was a great amount of right-of-way acquisition. While property was acquired from both sides of the roadway, most of it was acquired from the west side. What was the west right-of-way boundary is basically now the proposed centerline alignment. For the project, right-of-way was widened from 200 feet to 500 typically. Letting will be December of 18, and currently the cost estimate at the 60% milestone submittal is just under $200 million. So as mentioned, design kicks off each project. It goes through planning, the schematic phase, which would identify like broad stroke improvements, the project footprint, and it'll also include some high-level utility investigations. Property needs are identified, and the consultant is tasked to create a right-of-way map. with all the easements shown. And what that does is it assists our right-of-way section, our utility engineers to use during their part of the process. The design progresses through PS&E, which are the small strokes, which will refine the improvements with emphasis on staying within the established right-of-way and reducing utility conflicts.
This project started as an RMA project, and it was assumed by TxDOT. It originally started as pretty close to 100 parcels. Through district coordination and combining the fee and the easement parcels, we broke it down to about 54 parcels. And at the time of the presentation, we had 7 remaining. We're down to 5 now, and the last remaining parcels are in eminent domain. There's been some pretty difficult parcels, and those are the ones that are remaining. Today, during one of the breaks, I learned that we may escalate the letting from December to earlier in spring. So this project has come together pretty well with our district.
For this project, we've implemented a vegetative clearing plan. For a project, the final domino was construction, but to get there, you got to knock over a couple first. You have to have the non-joint utilities be cleared, and to get those utilities cleared, you have to have the room to work. To have the room to work, the right-of-way needs to be acquired. So what we did was coordinate the traffic control plan and sequence of work with both our right-of-way section and the utility engineer to determine who needs to move first and when they need to move. There was a great deal of coordination with the right-of-way section during the development of the clearing exhibit. We worked hand in hand with Bree staff and the design consultant to determine what was needed first. This aided right-of-way sections, their priorities for acquisition. So the picture you see up there, the gray represents, the picture represents the second planned phase of construction. The gray represents what was previously completed in the first phase. Blue is temporary pavement that ties it in, and the red will be what's constructed during the phase there. As you can see, the gray is separated a great distance from the existing roadway. There were acquisitions, this is where the acquisitions and the utilities were prioritized. So the picture now, it's a snapshot of the clearing exhibit that was developed. The hatch area represents about a 30-foot wide area that was being cleared. This width was coordinated with the utility owner and their equipment needs, basically to have the room to go in and get their facilities adjusted. The green labels are parcels that were acquired at the time the exhibit was developed. It was kind of dynamic when I took this. And the red are with the expected dates. And as Bree gave you the update, and we've got pretty much almost all of them done. So, and the clearing is anticipated to be complete in January of next year.
Okay, so our utility motto is avoid, minimize, and accommodate. I'm planning to make shirts out of this, so if anybody's interested, I know no one's going to wear them except me. But that is what we're doing on this project and all our other projects. One of the ways that we did avoid and minimize on this US 281 project is we did a redesign of the frontage road. We actually shifted it 5 feet closer to the center line to be able to allow more room and avoid the relocation of a 24-inch transmission water line. That pretty much saved the utility approximately $1.5 million. That's a lot of money for a utility company. So that was an awesome thing that we did. Our consultant did a great job. Glenn, he's here, so I give him the. Okay, so the other thing that we did on this project is we engaged the utility owners early in design. We had a kickoff meeting. It was in January of this year, which is 2 years in advance of the letting, so early coordination, very important. And at that kickoff meeting, we involved everybody. We involved the consultant, all their sub-consultants, and all the TxDOT staff who were going to be reviewing the project, and we really emphasized the need for utility avoidance, the utility relocation avoidance. So that was a success that we had early on this project. Now for future projects, we are doing utility coordination at the schematic phase. And so we are now having additional meetings, but we have seen a success in that. We also received input on the relocation requirements and schedules from the utilities for this project. We requested realistic schedules. I know in the past, we've always, asked for, we asked for something that we want to hear, but I always tell the utility companies, tell me what are the realistic schedules? Don't give me what I want to hear. So we asked for that schedule broken down by the priority phasing on the right-of-way acquisition and the vegetation clearing. And we're also including the telecom schedules, because as we know, it's not just the overhead electric power poles that get relocated. You also have pole attachers that they also need time to relocate their facilities. And on this project and on others, we're having one-on-one meetings. We started off the project with the general utility coordination kickoff meeting, and then we started going to one-on-ones with all the utility partners that you see on the screen. Those one-on-ones are a lot more efficient. You get into the details of the conflicts and not bore everybody else who's in the room that doesn't really care about everybody else's conflicts.
So getting to construction, currently the PSNE is approaching the 95% milestone. At that point, we're going to cut the non-joint bid utilities loose and get them started with their relocations. Something that we're beginning to implement on our projects is a field verification. Our consultant will monitor the adjustments and the relocations as they proceed in the field. When they finish, they'll survey those adjustments and they'll put them into the 100% plans. So what that'll do is it's going to allow the contractor to bid the project in the true existing conditions at the time that it goes to bidding, with all of the overhead utilities basically adjusted. And again, the project will be letting in December of 18. Anna, did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so I wanted to add one thing that actually recently, it just came up yesterday or a few days ago. For your joint bid projects for the Buy America, please confirm with your construction office that they are receiving the proper documentation for Buy America. Don't assume that construction is handling it. We did confirm, or we have confirmed that there's some confusion whether the utility company inspector is getting that Buy America documentation or if it's a TxDOT inspector. So just a word of advice, when you go back to your district, please maybe set up a meeting with your construction office to make sure that y'all are receiving the proper Buy America documentations.
Okay. So as any project goes, there's going to be some challenges to overcome, and we wanted to share some of those that we encountered, as well as provide the solutions of how we address them. Knowledge of the process. So we're a team for a reason. We all have our specialties, and it was painfully obvious to me as the project went that I had very little idea of how right-of-way acquisition process goes. And sitting in some of these sessions this morning, it's really just mind-boggling. The way we overcame this basically was just we had a lot of meetings. We had phone calls, emails, chased each other down the hallways. And basically, even while we were developing this presentation, we kind of I had questions for Bree while we were developing the slides because I just didn't know everything that's involved. I thought I knew a lot more than I did.
Insufficient field condition data. An example that we have from this project is we were preparing for a hearing and our appraisal showed 2 access points and the design exhibit only showed 1 and those didn't match. So that would be a very big problem at a special commissioner's hearing. So what we've done is we've decided to make sure that we include the designers in the beginning. We already drive the projects to find out what's there for right-of-way purposes, but we need to coordinate with the engineers to make sure that we're looking at the same information, getting their input, making sure that what we understand that we're valuing is exactly what they need for the project. So in some of the earlier presentations we heard today that we're driving the project, making sure that we're including the engineers and the utility coordinators to make sure that we're all communicating so that we're all looking at the same big picture.
So another challenge that we had was the limited border width in certain areas. There were certain tight right-of-way areas. One of the issues that we had was specifically with proposed retaining walls and the overhead power poles. So one of the ways that we dealt with that challenge was our consultant, once again, he looked at shifting the frontage road closer towards the center line to allow more room between the retaining wall and the right-of-way line. One of the ways that we're trying to deal with this issue early on is at the schematic phase, we're asking our consultants to develop proposed utility corridors, especially when we're acquiring right-of-way, so that we confirm, we're not just guessing, but we're confirming that there is going to be enough room for us to accommodate the utilities.
And acquisition from utility companies tend to be a little bit more difficult than usual when they're a fee acquisition. In this particular project, we had one parcel that was owned by the city through the utility company, and I learned something from Sharon's presentation today. We might have to call and get some assistance for that. But we were having problems on this particular one. They would be 100% covered for the utility relocation, but they still didn't want to negotiate for the fee acquisition. So this is one where we're not completely finished and we're still looking for creative solutions, but it's something that we've all brainstormed together to come up with ideas for how we can handle it in the future.
Okay, and last but not least, one of the challenges that we had was identifying utility easements correctly. And I'm sure a lot of other districts have this issue as well. While Bree was going through her right-of-way acquisition, there was a lot of easements that were brought to our attention, and the utility coordinators had not submitted those easement documents to us early on when we had requested them. So this could be a challenge because, as you know, utility agreements have to be executed before we start construction. So one of the ways that we are dealing with this challenge or issue is really getting the consultant and the utility owners to verify the easements early on at the schematic phase. You know, bringing in everybody, all the stakeholders, and making sure that they submit the documents early on.
And with that, does anybody have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead. So what's the department's position on taking utilities out of their easements? Out of the right-of-way. And into their easements. Okay, yeah. Okay, if they have an easement already and we're buying their property?
So we do give the utility company the option whether, if they're in the right-of-way and they want to go into an easement, one of the things with that is that the utility company won't be able to joint bid the construction, so that's the risk that they will have to clear prior to letting. So they have to go through acquiring the new easement or the replacement easements. So depending on the project and the schedule, that is an option that they could have. Now, if they're in an easement and they want to go into a right-of-way, and we actually have that a lot with our joint bid partners in San Antonio, that is something that we will pretty much compensate them for their existing easement and for the relocation as well. So we see it all ways all the time. It's just up to the utility company. And we try to get that information early on so we know what approach we're going to take, and we look at the schedule overall.
Any other questions? Do we have any gas main crossings, and if so, do we have to relocate them?
Yes, all the time. Thank you. No, we we do. We actually, I probably shouldn't say that, but yes, we work with gas companies all the time, and we have like the bigger gas companies like the Exxon, the Chevrons. A lot of those companies, we try to really avoid the relocation. So we try to get, actually, we do potholes at the schematic phase now, where we're trying to get exactly where these crossings are so that we can look at our profile and try to avoid them completely, because we know that it's time consuming and it's costly to avoid those major gas lines. Now, CPS Gas, they're our local gas company for San Antonio. We work with them a lot in our projects to accommodate them, or so sometimes they joint bid with us, and but we really normally don't have any issues with gas companies. We try to avoid the larger ones for sure. Correct. Yeah. So having that pothole data early on, that really helps our planning department to be able to adjust that profile and look at different ways to avoid conflicts with that utility.
Right. Oh, have we seen any much difference on the requirements for the utility combinations?
As far as the gas requirements?
That's probably a division type of.
Yeah.
Do we routinely require more from UAR?
We do have, I know that the utility accommodation rules are pretty general at times. They're very district-specific. So we do have certain requirements in the San Antonio district that our maintenance office prefers to see. So yeah, there are differences with the other districts on the requirements. And that's one of the things that we are going to be part of the committee to try to standardize some of these requirements throughout the state. And I think that's going to help us and everybody else along, the utility companies. It's going to be a big help for everybody. But yes, there are a lot of differences.
It's difficult to brag on your own projects, so let me brag on your behalf, if that's all right.
Sure.
This project is significant for several reasons as well. You guys are designing this in 3D, and that includes design of utilities. And also the fact that you guys did a complete internal investigations early and incorporated that into the identification resolution of conflicts. And all those things together, and the fact that the project is accelerated delivery, makes it a very significant project, and point that Federal Highway has actually been noticing that. So this will probably be used as an example project nationwide.
Thank you.
Well, if you're going to give us credit, I think you really do need to give the design consultant credit as well. We've been working with CH on this project. Glenn McCabe has been the project manager, and since day one, Glenn has been most accommodating. When we sat down and we scoped the project, the first two things I talked to Glenn about was traffic control and utility accommodations. And since day one, we've had buy-in from the consultant and their team, and that's really made a big difference too, because it's one thing internally for us to all be on the same page, and that's another thing to the credit of the people sitting up here, but it's another thing that our designer is on a full buy-in as well. So we do need to give credit all the way around, but thank you, Cesar.
Thank you all very much. I heard communicate, and communicate often and early.
Communicate.
I heard that from y'all. I heard that from the panel before y'all, the panel before y'all, and the panel before y'all. That's a lot of panels before y'all.
Yes.
But that seems to be the message here. Thank you all for attending. We appreciate it. Y'all have a safe trip back.